Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Princess Interrupted, the podcast. I'm your host, Allison Ziggy, and today I am joined by a goddess in human form. This is so incredibly special, a friend that I've been so grateful to have met in New York City, Kat Cozadd. Welcome to the Princess Interrupted podcast.
Thank you. Oh my God. I know it's so special to be here, especially like you said, the fact that so synchronistically, I feel like we were brought together in New York at some beautiful, like alcohol-free cocktail parties. The fact that we start at a cocktail party and now we're on a podcast feels so incredibly special.
Those cocktail parties were pretty luxurious. One of the hits that my intuition gave to me was to cut out alcohol on this process to becoming and growing my business. And I was like, I don't know. I felt so alienated from how I had met friends in the past. It felt so counter logical to go against that. I didn't know how it was going to work out. I made some of the closest friends that I made in New York at those events.
Totally. It's so funny when I also quit drinking. I was like, guess I have to move away from New York. Don't know how I'm going to do this. If I'm not drinking alcohol anymore, it's going to be really hard to find friends and date and do all of these different things. Quitting drinking is the best thing I've ever done for myself in my entire life because not only has it brought me so much closer to aligned friendships and people, but it's also shown me who I actually am to my core, independent of alcohol.
It brought you closer to yourself. And then it brought you
Totally.
closer to people who were meant to be in your life. It's such a mirrored experience for me. You and I had the privilege of sitting down with each other in New York. We went to the West Side Highway, one of my favorite places on planet Earth, and just grounded in the grass and soaked in the sun like little iguanas and just embrace the moment. I love the way that you live your life. I'd love for you to introduce your work a little bit. One of the first things I remember learning about you was that you said, I hate when people say, what do you do? So I don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to ask you the question that you hate to answer the most. And what do you do? But who you are as a person and the way you move through the world is so inspiring. Maybe a better way to word this is, what do you stand for? Who is Kat Cozadd?
Beautiful. I love that. The reason I hate the question, what do you do, is because, especially here in New York City, people size you up based off of what you do, where you live, where you went to school. And I'm like, I don't fit into any of these boxes. Never have, never will because of who I am and where I come from. Essentially, I am a mindset and manifestation coach, specifically helping people in the realm of money, because money has been one of the key pain points in my life, as well as one of the key points of freedom, to take it back to where I feel as though all of our stories start. I grew up in a very small rural town in Colorado with like 2,500 people in a household where my dad was an alcoholic. My mom wasn't a citizen of the United States. And in order for her to stay here and raise me and my brother, she had to tolerate a lot of crazy things. That's not to put all of the blame on my dad, but it just wasn't a very safe environment growing up. I didn't know that at the time, but my body did, my soul did. As a byproduct of the lack of safety and the instability that I experienced growing up, I put on a lot of weight at a young age and was technically considered obese as a kid and received a ton of bullying, a ton of scrutiny for that, which then continued to reinforce the lack of safety that I was already experiencing. Just struggled a ton growing up until the sophomore year of high school. I experienced suicidal ideation for the first time ever. It really scared me because at that time I was so good at faking it and putting on a brave face and being all happy-go-lucky, when in reality, behind closed doors, I was actually struggling so much. That was the first time I was put in the position where I had to face my mental health. At the time, it was a beautiful resource, but essentially it felt like I was putting band-aids over bullet wounds as opposed to actually getting to the core of healing any of the things that led me to that position in the first place. As I grew up and kept getting older, I then turned to drugs and alcohol instead to try and cover up those insecurities and wounds and traumas. I worked for a short period of time. It was fun for a short period of time, but ultimately it was just pouring gasoline on an already pretty burning fire. That led me up to the position of dropping out of university, moving to Denver, Colorado, working in the food and beverage industry, because as a college dropout, I thought that was the only thing that I could do. And ultimately just like always knowing that there was this feeling inside of myself of wanting more, but not knowing how to get to it. In early 2019, I was given the opportunity to move across state lines to help somebody open a restaurant. I was like, beautiful. This is my chance to start all over, fresh slate, have completely new life. I packed up all of my belongings, moved across state lines, thinking that all of the things that I was trying to run away from weren't going to follow me. Of course they did. But then at that point, I was in a completely new environment for the first time ever outside of my home state with none of the old comforts from the past except for drugs and alcohol. I was working this dead end job, 60 plus hours a week, $70,000 in debt, not knowing how to like really continue with my life moving forward, and hit this rock bottom moment where again, I was experiencing suicidal thoughts. And I had this, what feels like almost a movie moment. It's crazy the fact that it even happened because it does feel like it's only out of a movie. But I woke up on my floor one morning. It was actually the morning of the summer solstice in 2019, where I partied so hard the night before that I probably shouldn't have woken up that morning, but I did. I was on the floor of my apartment. I had no clue how I got there, and I was really scared. And I, in the days prior, had started praying that something would happen, something would change in order for my circumstances to change. Didn't know what to at the time because I felt really disconnected spiritually. But I felt this wave of energy wash through my body. And immediately I got up off the ground. I walked myself over to my bathroom mirror. I looked myself in the eyes in my reflection and I said, Kat, you have the power to change your life. So why haven't you yet? Later that day, I was reintroduced to the concept of intentional manifestation. I'd heard about it in the past, but in the past, I thought it was a bunch of bullshit. Whereas in that moment, it felt like a prayer answered. And from that day moving forward, I started implementing intentional manifestation into my life and told myself I had absolutely nothing to lose by seeing what could happen as a byproduct of it. Within a matter of weeks, my life started to change so drastically, so quickly. First, the internal experience of just feeling so different. And through that, I started sharing my story online with my Instagram followers, Facebook, so on and so forth. And people started asking me to help them with the same thing. I started supporting other people, was led to the place of understanding that this could be a business and something that I actually help people with. In January 2020, I launched my coaching business. Within a matter of months, it scaled to six figures and continued to scale past that point to the position where I was able to pay off $70,000 worth of debt in less than 10 months, moved to New York City after literally working as a barista less than a year before, and just like completely have a different life than what I ever expected myself to have. There's been many moments of challenges and grief and release and whatnot since, but I can genuinely say it's the most incredible journey. The greatest gift that's happened throughout it is the fact that I've now been able to help hundreds of women firsthand through my coaching programs, but also impact the lives of millions through social media, podcasts, and all the other platforms. Very long-winded way to say that what I do is essentially I help people identify what it is that's stopping them from having, being, and doing what it is that they desire and creating the life that they want.
I just want to Kat, that was so incredibly beautiful and just experiencing that. And I've heard your story many times, but just sitting, receiving, listening, and just feeling into the experiences that you've had. Wow. Not just how much you've overcome, but the purpose that you've given to these experiences and the way that your story gives permission to other people who might be in similar circumstances right now, who hear something like that and can say, you know what, Kat did it, so can I. There's a million different things you could pick out within that story in and of themselves that are inspirational, or moments that people can relate to along that journey. That cycle of the stuckness of feeling like you're just waking up day after day and things are never going to change, feeling so out of control, not feeling at home in the world, not feeling at home, not feeling at home in your body. And being able to decide that you get to have a different experience of life and deciding that you're worthy of that, and deciding that not only that, you want to be this beacon of light for other people and you want to share from the scars, not the wound, but even share the messy middle as things are unfolding. I really applaud you just in your authenticity and how you really show up as, you know, it feels so honest.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that. I receive all of that. And it's like what you said, and I really appreciate you saying this, is like, if Kat can do it, I can do it too. Because that's been my message from the beginning of this is like, I'm literally a girl from small town Colorado that used to raise goats. And now I'm a multiple six-figure entrepreneur living in New York City, living a life that, as that's girl from a small town in Colorado who dropped out of school, who raised goats, who did all of these things, I never thought was going to be possible. That's the power that all of us have inside of ourselves. There's a part of me that always wants to say that I'm not special, because it's like, I'm just like everybody else. Like, I'm not special. You can do it too, but I am special and you're special too. And that's also why you can do this. So many people go through really challenging things that they feel isolated within. And if there's anything that I feel so grateful for, even when we were talking on the West Side Highway a few weeks ago, is like, when we hold ourselves in that place of isolation, we think that our experiences are so unique to us and that there's no way to overcome them, versus when you give yourself that permission to be vulnerable in some sort of capacity, or share your story, or confide in a close friend, or whatever it is, you find out you're actually not alone within it. And it opens up the doorways to solutions and opportunities and ways for you to better your life or be in the circumstances that you actually want to be in, versus continuing to stay in that position of stuck.
Absolutely. We're not meant to go through these things alone. One of the most beautiful parts of vulnerability and living your life from this place of honesty and not trying to protect your shame and protect the things that tell you you're unworthy or undeserving of love is that you give other people the opportunity to receive you in love and to give love
Mm-hmm.
to you back. I know for a long time I had so much shame around having debt. And I know when I was trying to date, I didn't want to be judged. I was looking at these external things as reasons for feeling unlovable.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I finally opened up about struggles to people in my world, I received so much more love that I had been holding out on for so long.
Totally. Totally. It's crazy. Before we started recording, Alice and I were talking about this energy of needing to prove yourself in some sort of capacity. I don't know if it's always been this way. I don't know if I just didn't have a gauge on it before, but since the pandemic and the chronic onlineness where everybody is tuned into what other people are experiencing and people's advice and what this person did to get what they wanted and this and that and so on and so forth, there's almost been, especially for women, this unrealistic standard created of who you need to be, how you need to show up, what it looks like for you to date or be successful in business, or whatever it is, whatever somebody is wanting to manifest or experience in their life. Just like you're talking about, like love. I want to experience love. I want to experience connection. But now suddenly, because I've been consuming all of this shit, all of the rule books from everybody else, this person, their mom, so on and so forth, like everybody, I now have this massive to-do list or rule book or whatever that is somebody else's that I am posing on myself to try and prove that I am worthy of those things before I can say I can have love.
Ugh. Exactly. It's these external expectations of who you need to be and how you need to present yourself. One of the things that I know you've talked about online before is the inverse, like not feeling guilty for not having money, dating when you do have a lot of money. Dating. So could you talk on that too?
Yeah, it's super interesting. This actually flared up for me this past weekend. So it's
Oh my
fun that we're
gosh, tell
talking about
us.
it now. When I first started making a lot of money, I was now stepping into a dynamic that I had never been in before, which was that I was making more money than the guys that I was dating a lot of the time. Because of that, there was almost like, either one, I needed to be over giving to these men in order to prove that, oh, I'm still like a nice, kind hearted, sweet girl. Like, I'm not a boss babe bitch that's going to try to put you down or emasculate you for the fact that I have more money than you. And like really get over giving in that sort of capacity. One of the things that I've been met with a lot, and I think that this is more of a reflection of just where somebody is at when they're choosing to date me, is I've had a lot of guys come at me with, I'm just not in the financial position to date you. And I'm like, okay, thanks for being honest. I wasn't going to say that. I think you're fine. I was enjoying our time together. there is, whether it be societal norms or weird unspoken rule books that people are performing by, I feel as though a level of insecurity that comes from somebody being in a different financial position or a different financial bracket than you're at.
Mhm.
And I've seen it definitely reflected in dating. When I first was like, oh, wow, I have a lot of guys who are coming into my life that are either telling me that they're not in the position to date me because of their financial standing, or I'm noticing myself overgiving to these guys and then them walking away anyway. I almost went into this position at first of making myself smaller and like making less money and not wanting to be as intimidating and really hiding my shine and my radiance, because love is one of the most important things to me. When I think about my future and what I want to manifest, it's a husband and kids. And so to think that this thing that I've had a lot of success within and pride surrounding is something that's actually holding me back from receiving the thing that I want the most. At first, it was like, let me step back and let me hide from this thing and let me not make as much money to see if that changes things. The only thing it changed was that I was not attracting as high caliber of men. The reframe that I've been able to introduce into my life is stepping into the state of receiving regardless of my financial status and letting a man take care of me regardless of how much money I'm making or how much money is in the bank account. Because at least in my experience of dating, I feel as though men want to take care of you. And if they don't, and they like want you to take care of them, that's fine in some sort of ways, but not the dynamic that I want. It's been really interesting to be able to see in real time how my wounds surrounding money, receiving, being a good person has impacted dating, but also just like the weird societal scripts surrounding money and dating.
This brings up so much. You just opened a whole can of worms. I don't think that you and I'm ready to,
Yay!
I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's dive in because now
Let's go.
I'm getting excited. I'm getting activated. I'm like, okay, so many things to say on this because I had been making six figures through my tech job from the time I was in my early 20s.
Yep.
And so I always had this threshold of I'm a high-powered woman. Like I used to be a corporate baddie. Let me tell you, I was like climbing ladders. So then I started to apply manifestation to dating.
Mm-hmm.
Dating had always been my struggle area for as long as I could remember. I had always dated men who had a lot of money, but it also felt like there was this weird competitive energy that I would have with them. I don't know if you've ever run into this, where like one time this guy I was dating had his W-2 on the table and it was like 850K or something. And I was like, I want to beat this, which is like maybe not a natural response either, but I was like, especially because he was like, so what I do is so important. I'm like, let me show you it through ease and flow. And it just felt important to bring that up now, but I almost went into the opposite. And that's my masculine getting triggered. But the other thing was, it wasn't even necessarily like those guys took better care of me. I look at the guys who I've dated who have treated me the best. And yes, I do like to be provided for. I want him to upgrade me to first class. I've had guys do this before. I want him to get me flowers and think of me, and I want to feel treated nicely. But those qualities don't necessarily come from how much money is on his W-2. I look at the guy who made all that money and you wouldn't even know the difference.
100%. One of the things that I love to say to the women that I work with, and one of the things that I stand by, is that money is a neutral resource. It's not good, bad, right, wrong, positive, or negative. And money just amplifies the heart. So I think our society does a really great job of positioning wealthy people, quote unquote, wealthy people as, oh, they're greedy, they're snobby, they're snippy, they're short, they're this, they're that. Or it's like, oh, well, they should be taking better care of me in a relationship. They should be providing for me in this way. They should be X, Y, and Z. And that's never going to be about the money. It's always going to be about the person. And we get those things so confused. I think especially, again, just on a societal basis. And even like, girl, do you ever see like the dating TikToks where it's like giving you a rule book of like how a man must treat you if X, Y, and Z. Honestly, men are being put into a worse off position than they ever have when it comes to dating, because everybody's being told like, oh, well, he must make six figures, otherwise he's not a provider, or he must do
Mhm.
X, Y, Z. And it's like, wait. That's not about the money. That's about the man. Like
It's
the
not about the
man is
money.
the provider energy is going to come from the man himself, not from the money that he makes. Because there can be a man, like you said, 850K a year. If he's not a provider, he's not going to show up and provide for you.
It was another thing because he said to me, I just get so worried about your dreams. Like you have so many dreams.
Mm.
And at the time, I wasn't fully in my truth. I still had
Mm-hmm.
my tech job and I was kind of like, oh, what do you mean? Like, that's not a bad thing. Like, I can't think of a better example to set for your kids. I tried to bargain with him, but it's like, if this man feels that way, we are not compatible. He does
Totally.
not want what I bring to the table, and I will never. I am an idea factory. I love to create through life. I love my work. I want my work to be it reflected in my life. That's always going to be a part of who I am. And in that
Yep.
moment, similarly to what you were saying about shrinking when they weren't making money, I was trying to shrink to fit who he needed me to be because I felt like he did have so many things on paper that I wanted.
Yep. Girl, same, 100%.
Like,
It is.
yeah.
I had a really similar experience right before I moved to New York. I was dating a guy who was lovely and he wanted to keep up with my lifestyle. Again, like you said, early 20s, I went from making $825 an hour to like $250,000 a year within 12 months. I went from like 23-year-old who knows the struggle to like 24-year-old who's fucking balling and can do
Yeah.
whatever she wants. I end up dating this guy. He was a dispatcher and he was making a dispatcher's salary. And he loved the idea of me, but he didn't love me. He started to try to keep up with the life and the dreams that were manifesting for me. And as soon as he saw those dreams actually coming to fruition, it was like, wait, we can't do this. If you and I are in this together, like you're going to have to go at my pace. And I was like, well, like I'm on a rocket ship right now. And like you can't stop a rocket ship. Like I'm going up. But there was a part of me for a short period of time that was like, am I too much? Am I too ambitious? Am I X, Y, and Z? And trying to shrink myself to change or be what he needed. But I think that again, in those moments, the thing that I come back to is like somebody who says that to you doesn't want you, they want the idea of you.
I don't even know if he wanted the idea of me. He had a role he wanted to fill, and he's like, I don't think you fit this. And I was trying to argue why I did, because I didn't
Totally.
love myself enough to look at all the red flags going on in the situation to walk away, because I was blinded by the parts of him that did fit what I wanted.
Totally.
And beyond that, like my perspective now is like this guy was just a fuck boy. Like
Yeah, average.
he was never going to give me what I needed to feel safe and secure in a relationship. But as a result of that experience, I was able to go deeper into my preferences and define what was important to me and take the parts of him that did align and then recognize what I needed beyond that.
Well, okay. I have something to ask you based
Yes.
off of what you just said. So, what I heard you just say was this man was never going to have what it took to provide me with safety and security, especially emotionally. Did you confuse the money that he was making for the safety that you thought he could provide for you?
I mistook a lot of his superficial qualities for who I thought. Yes, absolutely. If he were in a different position, would I have let it go on as long? I don't know. Part of me even feels like shallow admitting that, but I did want a provider type. I have high quality standard of life that I want for myself, but I do think that I maybe gave him a pass.
Totally. And the only reason I ask that is because one of the things that I'm so passionate about when it comes to money and money manifestation specifically is that we confuse safety and security with money.
Mhm.
And whether it be in the context of what you just said, like in a relationship, wanting safety and security, confusing the external resources and circumstances and whatnot that this man has available as safety and security. One of the biggest things that I see for the women that I work with is like, okay, well, if I have this amount of money in the bank, or if I have this kind of job, or if I'm making this much a month, or whatever it is, once I pay off all the debt, then I'm going to feel safe. Then I'm going to feel secure. Then I'm going to feel good. And the reality is, money can never give you that. Money's never going to be the thing that makes you feel safe and secure, because the reality is, money could be taken away at any point. And if money is taken away and your entire sense of safety is wrapped up in that, then you're completely stripped of your sense of safety, as opposed to the key to what you were talking about earlier of like, I'm going to boss up and I'm going to show you that I can do the same thing, but I'm going to do it through ease, flow, intuition, and in a completely different way. When we're talking about manifesting more money into our lives and actually creating the genuine, long-lasting, sustainable wealth that you want, it's never going to come from pointing at the money and being like, okay, I'm going to go get that because that's what's going to make me feel safe and secure. It's always going to be from turning the finger back around, pointing it at yourself and saying, okay, why don't I feel safe and secure right now? What inside of me do I need to address and work through and face and release and remove so that I can cultivate that deep sense of safety inside of myself? When you're your own source of safety, you exist in your zone of genius. You do the things that you want to do, which leads you to this place of flow and intuition and feeling good. And through that, as we both know, it's like, that's where you are so magnetic to your manifestations and so magnetic to the money that you're wanting to manifest.
I even want to take it a step further. Absolutely, to everything you said. And a man also can't give that to you. It's
Oh,
not his
1000%.
responsibility to, but I can say that I have been in relationships where it has been easy to feel safe. So as
Beautiful.
opposed to them providing it, they also weren't disturbing it. So in
Mm-hmm.
this situation, not only was he not going to provide it, he was disrupting the piece that I had created for myself. And you can't
Mm-hmm.
put a price on that. How do you feel about this quote? If you marry for money, you're going to work for every dollar.
Ooh. Ooh. How do I feel about that quote? When you
There's-
marry dollar, I feel like it's like if that's the sole reason you're marrying for it, for sure. If you're in a relationship with somebody purely for the financial cushion or the financial resources that are available, but this person is disrupting your peace, this person isn't respecting your dreams, this person doesn't value you in the same way that you value them, absolutely it's going to feel more like a chore than it is a enjoyable co-creation experience.
I just have some of my past experiences to go off of, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also an inherent power imbalance when you're in a relationship and two people are at different financial levels.
I feel like it can be, but it doesn't have to be. And that comes down to somebody's relationship with money more so than anything else.
Okay.
When I think about it in the context of if I was the breadwinner,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to make myself the more powerful person in that relationship. You know, I don't want to be like the one that feels like I have the upper hand on everything because of the fact that I am the one that is more financially successful. But if I wasn't to do work on my relationship to money, my relationship to myself, and the way that I perceive my quote unquote value as a byproduct of somebody who is making a significant amount of money, then absolutely I could step into any dynamic with somebody who's making less money than me and be like, I'm better than you.
Yeah. So the next question I have is when do you talk about money when you start getting into relationships? You're in a relationship with money. And when you enter a relationship with someone else, they have their own relationship to money. So
Totally.
how do you find a way where these all come together and can support
Mm.
each other?
What comes up for me as you say that is when you're feeling safe inside of yourself. If you are going into relationship with someone and your relationship to money is feeling rocky or scary or inconsistent or whatever it is, and you're then getting into a relationship with somebody who does have some sort of power dynamic or there's some sort of control aspect there, that's still going to feel scary and daunting and all of the different things. When it comes to myself within dating and money, Money comes up really quickly because money is something that I feel really safe with. And money comes up quickly because I also feel really safe within myself, regardless of what the circumstances are. In the moments where I've been really financially struggling, it's been, okay, I feel safe within myself and I still feel safe within money, even though I'm struggling right now. I have the power to talk about this. Same with when I'm doing really financially well and I'm feeling safe within myself, that can be brought up in that sort of context. I don't think I would be there without this really deep look at like, oh, first I wanted to shrink myself and make less money because I felt as though that's what I needed to do to receive love or be in partnership, versus now being able to look at the relationship with myself, the relationship with money, and the like relationship or dynamic that I want to have with someone have all been really beautiful mirrors to like, how can I create more safety inside of myself? I know that's like not a concrete answer to it, but it definitely comes back to the safety, like a level of
Yeah.
safety inside of yourself to be able to present that. That's not to say that you have to feel 100% safe within all of these different areas before you have the conversation, especially if it's somebody that you feel safe with. I think more so than any of those, you need to feel safe with the person before you start to have these conversations.
This brought up two major things for me. Number one, it's having the awareness that you are not your circumstances, positive or negative. It's being able to detach your identity from what's happening and being able to share vulnerably. And then in exchange, what you're receiving, you're creating a connection with someone.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that safety within yourself, you're not going to be able to establish as strong of a connection because you're not able to bring as much of yourself forward into the connection.
Totally.
That's step one. It seems like we had mirrored wounding around this, where you were dating men who were intimidated by how much you were making. Whereas I look at my lineage and I come from multi generations of divorce. My grandmother struggled and she had to support financially five children. And my mom then was a single mom, the single mom lineage of like, it's not safe to rely on a man for money. And also, you need to work hard. And I look at my mom when she was dating and she wasn't able to receive anything. Even when she had a boyfriend, she didn't want any of it. Like she didn't want to be a gold digger. She didn't want to take money. So it was interesting, kind of the inverse of that. And that goes back to the overworking wound, the working to prove your worthiness,
Mm-hmm.
to not need to be taken care of. But as I've stepped more into my feminine, I've released the need to prove anything.
Same.
Right?
It's so nice.
It's so natural.
It's where your zone of genius actually comes on, because when you're constantly like working to prove yourself, prove yourself, prove yourself, prove yourself, you're just repeating these cycles of lack over and over and over again, thinking that you're getting somewhere else, but almost essentially like digging yourself a deeper hole in it. And the only way you get out of the hole is by recognizing like, there's actually nothing to prove here. I'm not supposed to be in this hole. I'm not supposed to be in this one exact spot. I'm supposed to be in my zone of genius, which exists somewhere else, whether that be in relationship, whether that be in business, whether that be in your relationship to yourself, your body, so on and so forth. I love what you said of the more that you've connected to your feminine energy and the more that you've allowed yourself to explore and express and be embodied in that part of yourself, there's been this natural release and relax of, oh, whoa, I don't have to prove myself.
Wild. My brain has been transformed as a result of releasing this worthiness wound. It comes from a need to prove yourself, but it manifests through overworking to change your circumstances. I find that dating and money are so related. I'm sure.
Oh my God, they're the exact same.
Where it's the same energy of like swiping to get the outcome. It's taking actions to get the outcome. It's going on dates to get the outcome, as opposed to being the energetic match for what you're calling in. I really challenge when people say he can't just knock on your door. Like I've dated multiple neighbors
Love.
at different points throughout my life. And I look at these experiences and they've got to me to where I'm at. They're the experiences I've had. I look at relationships and connections, they're soul assignments. They help us mirror back parts of ourselves and prepare us for when we are ready for that long-standing connection. And it's not necessarily there's one soulmate who's perfectly right for you and you can get it wrong and do these things, but it's just enjoying yourself in the process of the unfolding and then waking up one day and being like, oh my gosh, we've been together for a year.
Totally. Totally. What was the shift or the experience that led you down the road of connecting to your feminine energy?
I felt like I had just been working so hard, like
Mhm.
showing up every day, doing things, and it just started to feel so exhausting. And it feels like I was gripping my creativity by the neck and like, tell me what to say, tell me what
Mhm.
to do. And I just got to a place where it didn't feel aligned anymore. There was actually a pattern that had played out where I had been chasing money, chasing down a client, chasing down this invoice, and both fell through where it was like I had undervalued the exchange. And I looked at it and I was like, I'm done with this pattern. What is the common thread here? And what do I need to do to clear this energy? And I
Yeah.
looked at in both situations, I felt like I had been overworking and trying to prove myself.
Hmm.
That was 100% a pattern that I had in dating as well.
Yep.
100%. As a millennial woman, I feel like there was a lot of programming that we had around that.
Oh, for sure. I relate to this in a different way. If you're coming from a lineage of divorced parents and especially like a single moms work their asses off. They hustle and make shit happen. If that's the mirror, the witness of what you're seeing for work and all of these different things, of course, it then gets applied to relationships as well. That was something I saw within my mom, although she was married to my dad. My dad wasn't very active or present within everything. So it was always like, work your ass off, make it happen. You got this. Don't sit down at the end of the day until you've done enough work. Don't eat until you've done
Mhm.
enough work. Don't
Mhm.
do whatever until you've done enough work. When you're so conditioned into that, at least this is my experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I loved hustling in the way that I used to because of the result that I was seeing as a byproduct of it.
Mm.
I got addicted to this toxic achievement cycle because even though it never felt like it was quote unquote enough, and I was still always trying to prove something in some sort of way, I
Mhm.
was still seeing momentum and I was still seeing progress. I was seeing more money hitting my bank account, or I was seeing more opportunities showing up, or whatever it was. The huge shift for me that got me to actually start to address stepping into my feminine energy was like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. But I was on a call with my life coach and I was so frustrated and I was so sad about dating and relationships and how none of them were working out and this and that. And he was like, well, yeah, because dating a man isn't like running a business. Like you can't just keep hustling harder and harder and harder to get him to do what you want. You are coming at this masculine man with your masculine energy. And two things can happen in that situation. Either one, he's going to turn into the feminine and you're going to feel like you're taking care of your son, or you're going to butt heads up against a masculine man and he's going to walk away from it. And it was this pivotal moment for me because before that, I didn't actually see that I had been applying that same work harder, 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 make it happen energy to dating until that conversation. And it's so cool to see that since then. And just like you're talking about the parallel between like love, dating, relationships, so on and so forth, to money, is that absolutely that is one way that you can approach both of those things. But the more magnetic, more powerful way to approach both of those things is through this like ease, flow, alignment, feminine energy, and like natural magnetism to it.
So my experience is a little bit different, but there are similarities. When I was in my tech job, I was so heavily in my masculine, and that was when I saw the results. That was
Mm-hmm.
when the more effort you put in, it was directly correlated to seeing financial gains. When
Mm-hmm.
I tried that in my business, it just backfired though, because it just,
Mm-hmm.
so that was the distinction for me towards the end of my tech career. I was leaned into my feminine, but then my masculine, it was still prevalent, but it was just in my business. And it
Mm-hmm.
actually was a repelling energy. And so I couldn't understand why I applied the same formula to something similar. And it was based on my soul and what I wanted to do and why it wasn't working the same way that it had.
Yep.
For dating, I had never really had the results that I wanted. I had been on Hinge, and this was in 2020. And I went on a date with this guy, and it was like a 36-hour date, but not in a good way. He wouldn't leave. I didn't want to do anything sexually with him, and I made that clear, but he wouldn't leave. It was very uncomfortable, and I felt like I was being held hostage in my own house. And I would never put myself in a situation like this now, but at the time, this was a turning point for a reason. And I just remember when he left, I just like screamed, and it felt like I had been screaming in like multiple timelines. And I was just like, God, universe, I am handing over my love life to you, because clearly, if this is the kind of a situation that I'm attracting from forcing and forcing and trying and going on dates and showing up and wanting it so badly, I am doing something terribly, terribly out of alignment with what I want. So I am handing it
Yep.
over to you. And ever since then, I've met every partner organically. It's not like all of my experiences of love have necessarily been a walk in the park since then. I've still had things that I've had to work through, but I completely released the grip on it.
Yeah. Whoa, crazy. Beautiful. What you said of your business and how hustling and your business was a repelling force. I think it's so beautiful. So, first 2 years of my business, I hustled my ass off. I made it happen. And then there hit this point where it was like the more I tried to hustle, the less would happen. It started to backfire. So much of what you're saying is so true. When you find the things that are actually like soul aligned, I was getting from the place in my business where it was like, okay, still figuring this out, don't know what is soul aligned, getting to this place where I now have the like opportunity, the resources, the freedom to start to identify that. As I started to identify it and step into it, I tried to approach it from the same level of hustle. And it was just backfire, 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 backfire. It took honestly like 2 years of like that to figure out the fact that hustling was never going to be the solution within something that is soul aligned. It's only ever going to be a level of alignment. That exact sort of experience of, okay, like I surrender, God, source, spirit, universe, whatever the heck it is, whatever anybody wants to call it, guide me. Because obviously what I'm doing, from whether it be ego or old patterns or what I think is best for me, apparently isn't. And so I'm putting my faith and trust into your hands that you're going to show me how this gets to be done. I think that's one of the most powerful things that anybody can do for themselves, but especially like what you're talking about in the context of dating, or even in the context of what I'm talking about with business. And to know that we're not doing any of this alone is one of the
Yes.
most powerful things to remember, and one of the easiest things to forget.
Yes. You don't need to get to that point where you have this, they call it a come to Jesus moment, but like
Yeah.
the on your knees, like I'm done. But it becomes so beautiful when you do run against that wall. When I had this order get taken, and I was just like, what is the pattern here? This is obviously a subconscious pattern. I looked at it through pure facts. I was no longer projecting stories. What were the facts of this situation? And why was this something that was happening multiple times? And
Totally.
the common denominator was me. And I was able to look at, okay, if I was truly in my power, this wouldn't have gone on this long. I would have cut this off a while ago. And I was able to see that. And I was able to say, okay, I'm willing to try a new way. And it
Mm-hmm.
really did shift everything. And then the question becomes less about what can I do today and more about how can I bring more of myself into my reality? How can I align to the things that are meant for me? How can I make this more fun? How can I actually introduce more fun into my life, not as a means to an end, but as a means of making everything that you're desiring in the physical a byproduct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. 100%. I love what you said. I don't know if this is something that all of the listeners who are here hanging out with us would want to hear, but it's something that I get asked
Mhm.
when I'm talking about it is like you just said, when I'm in my power. What does being in your power mean to you?
I view it as my magnetism energy. I view this
Mm,
as when I am being me. And when I am not performing, I'm not trying. I just am existing and I am so connected to the present moment
Yeah.
where nothing else really matters. And it feels like the sensation of getting free coffee, getting free things, getting doors opened for you, people stopping on the street and turning head. Like it's such a tangible physical energy. And it's when I just know I'm showing up as who I'm truly meant to be.
Beautiful. Beautiful. 100%. I love that you have a way to actually describe it. One of the things that like honestly irks me about our world of things, like
Mhm.
people throw words like that out there and they're like, be in your power, be in alignment, be
D-snap.
in magnetism. And people are like, okay, but I'm not right now, so I don't know what that means. And one of the things that I found on this journey and guiding so many other people is that it's not going to look the same for anybody else. That is Allison's blueprint of magnetism. That is Allison's blueprint of being in her power. And like for me, it's like me being in my power is trusting myself on the cellular level. It's not just, oh, I hope I trust myself, or maybe I'll make this decision.
Mhm.
It's like knowing at my core that I trust myself, knowing at my core that, like you said, I am and get to be the version of myself that is truest to me and trust that that is enough. And it's like, great. But for somebody else, being in their power might be something so different. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about that because being in your power, my power, anybody who's listening's power is going to be their own unique makeup. One of the beautiful things in everything that we're talking about with dating, money, careers, all of these different things is an opportunity to dance with all of it and figure it out and not think that you need to follow somebody else's plan or have a specific A to Z journey to get there. And it's more so like, okay, I'm going to trust it. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see what happens. And I'm going to find what works for me. And I'm going to leave the rest.
Absolutely. When you start playing with life like that, things just become exponentially more enjoyable. And you get to experience yourself through life in a more pleasurable, pleasant experience. I love this so much. I've loved this conversation. I love this. Is there anything that you want to leave listeners with? Any takeaways? Anybody who's listening to this and she's still working out what I'm attracting in love and money. I'm working on both of these areas.
I love
What do I
that.
do next?
Yeah, I would say take a look at your relationship to receiving. And what I mean by that is like from something as simple as a compliment to somebody buying you a coffee to anything beyond that. What is your relationship to receiving? And is it something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that feels like a challenge? And being able to stretch yourself in that sort of way. So, like, when I first was diving into all of this inner work at the beginning of my intentional manifestation healing business journey, I was scared to even ask my roommate at the time to unload the dishwasher because I was so used to doing everything by myself. Although that sounds very minor in the way of you can unload the dishwasher, it's like, yeah, but I was wanting to receive tens of thousands of dollars a month. If I'm scared to even ask somebody to unload the dishwasher, I'm going to be scared to ask somebody to pay me for my services. Or put myself out there in the way that I can receive in that sort of capacity, or go on a date with a man when he wants to fly me somewhere for the weekend. And I'm going to be like, I can't
Are you
receive something like
sure?
that. Yeah. Check in with your relationship to receiving. And if receiving is something that feels challenging to you right now, lean in. Learning how to receive without expectation of needing to give back or without feeling as though you owe in any sort of capacity or that it's unsafe for you to do so. Feeling fully safe in receiving just for being you is where you are going to not only attract all the money that you want, but also receive the kind of relationships that are going to provide and support you in the way that you want.
And this can be uncomfortable in the process of the unfolding of working it. I found that even letting people receive you in your vulnerability is
Oh,
huge.
yeah.
One of my friends gave me this tip of like, checking yourself anytime you start to tell a half truth or a lie to somebody and asking yourself why that is and bringing more of yourself and letting the
I
world
love that.
receive more of you. I have one final question for you, Kat. Let's do a little
Amazing.
manifesting. What are you calling in with your next partner? What are some qualities like,
Ooh.
can we just like tap into his energy a little bit and like maybe invite some of his energy into the podcast and maybe if you could speak on some of the qualities.
Yeah, I love that. The man that I am manifesting into my life, he's equally as ambitious.
Love,
He
I have
wants
chills. I feel it. Yeah.
he wants to squeeze the most juice out of life that he possibly can. One of
Mm.
the things that I like to say is like, I'm only getting cooler, weirder, hotter, and richer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah. I was like,
I'm
absolutely. We love it.
I want to peak on the last day of my life. And I want somebody who sees life in that same way, that it's only a journey of getting better and better versus we're going to do whatever at this point so that we can have a few good years before things start to decline. It doesn't matter what background they come from, doesn't matter what job they have. What matters to me is we have alignment in our desire for life. And we have alignment in our desire to be the best versions of ourselves. It doesn't have to look the same. Preferably, it doesn't look the same. I don't necessarily want a guy who sits around and does the same manifestation rituals as I do. It's kind of weird to
Little
me.
polarity. I felt full chills as you described that. And these are just little clues from ourselves about the kind of future experiences that are coming our way. So,
Totally. I had a weird experience over the weekend with like relationship stuff. And I was telling one of my dear friends on the phone all about it. And he was like, okay, here's what I'm here to tell you. There's a man equally, if not more ambitious than you, who is standing in line for a coffee right now somewhere in the city, who is like, getting ready to start his day and he is so eager to meet you. It was just in that of, oh wow, let's connect to his energy. I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is like little moments like that, just reminding like, oh yeah, he's out there right now. Like
it's
he's born, he's
inevitable.
alive, he might be in the city.
It's inevitable. And your paths are going to cross when it's meant to be. I know I send my future husband energy all the time. I'm like, there
No.
you are. But not even from a place of attachment of, and I mean, for a long time, I was stuck in that energy of like, where is he? When's he coming?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I still single? I'm such a catch.
Yeah,
Instead of just living my life and also dating from that place of the inevitability releases the pressure for you to get upset about the people who aren't him because it's okay.
totally. 100%. But yeah, that's him.
That's him. Well, you'll have to keep us posted. And so,
I will.
where can people find you on the interwebs?
Two best places to find me. I also have a podcast. It's currently on a little bit of a break, but it's called That's So Rich. There's almost 200 podcast episodes that you can listen to all about manifestation, money mindset, creating safety inside of yourself, all of these good things we've been talking about. If you actually want to connect with me and be a part of my world, just come hang out with me on Instagram. My handle is at Kat Cozadd, and I'm sure you'll put the spelling to that in the
Yeah.
show notes. But Instagram's where you can find me most often. And if this resonates with you anyway, feel free to shoot me a DM because I check all of those and want to have conversations with anyone.
Amazing. Kat, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful energy with us today. I love you. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for joining this week's episode of Princess Interrupted, the podcast.